hear me loud and clear? So now the FMG exam is just around the corner, and I do understand that many of you may be stressed. And I also know that most of the people coming here have already given few attempts, maybe one, two, or even more attempts. And many of you have lost your FMG pass certificate just with 2, 3 marks or even 1 mark, right? I know a lot of people who are stuck at 149, and many of you are in a loop of repeating with the numbers between 135 to 150. You are not able to cross that 150 mark. Of course, when it comes to FMG exam, it's not always about how well read you are or how much you have read, because then most of the FMG students I know, because I've been part of your journey, I have been traveling between different cities and taking classes in offline as well as online space. I interact with most of you, and I know that all of you are putting extreme efforts to pass this FMG exam. Despite extreme effort, despite attending 8 to 10 hours of physical lectures, then some online tests, online lectures, solving MCQs, you're literally putting 10 to 12 hours every day into your study consistently for several months, but still getting stuck between 135 to 100, 150 quite is hurtful, right? It's quite hurtful. But why is that happening? Now, having mentored so many students and having interacted with so many students who saw success and also those students who got stuck, I have few observations, and I have realized that FMG students, though they study well, do plenty of mistakes which cost them the dear pass certificate. So today we will try to decode those 5 mistakes and how you can avoid them, and hopefully by avoiding them you should be able to crack this exam. So here's a list of important mistakes that you make when you're preparing for FMG exam. The first mistake that I'm addressing here is the choice of source. This is very, very unfortunate, and when I see this mistake happening again and again by the FMG students, I feel quite heavy on my heart. I'll tell you the reason. The FMG exam is a licentiate exam or a licensing exam. It's not a competitive entrance exam, right? Now, of course, in India, we have the NEET PG and INICT, and most of the platforms have sources designed for INICT or NEET PG or FMG. Now, if you feel enthusiastic or if you feel very confident that you can read all this exhaustive source, you may end up making a choice of source which is primarily meant for someone who is targeting the INICT. But if you're choosing such a source, it may cost heavy on you. I'm not discouraging you from choosing such a source, but you should always keep in mind the time you have at your disposal. If you're right now, let us say in Russia or Kazakhstan, and you're doing your first MBBS or second MBBS, you have plenty of time. You can make a choice of any source. Any source, literally any source is doable if you have 5 years in your hand. But if you have 6 months in your hand, how is it possible for you to choose a source which is mainly meant for INICT and be able to complete it and then be able to do several revisions before your FMG exam? Not possible, right? So avoid going into an INICT source. Then next, some of you might think that because FMG exam is up at the level of NEET PG today, why not choose a NEET PG resource and then like have that skill and knowledge of dealing with NEET PG so that I can easily crack FMG? That's also a mistake. I'll tell you why. Well, I do agree that the margins are blurred between the NEET PG and FMG. Still, you also need to know that there are a lot of topics which are regularly repeated in the FMG which may not be repeated in NEET PG. So you're not perfectly or exactly preparing through the source which is relevant for you, right? So choose an FMG source. I'm not saying that you can't do or you can't crack the FMG by choosing the NEET PG source. Of course, knowledge is same. You can definitely crack the FMG even with NEET PG as source, but that is suitable for most of the smart kids. Any issue? Give me a second, guys. Some technical issue. We're getting it sorted. I'll just have to log in my. Yeah, but okay, so guys, I'm extremely sorry. There were some technical issues, and my team has got it sorted. So we're back. I was talking to you about the 5 mistakes that routinely FMG students do and how to avoid them. And I was talking to you about the first mistake, the choice of source. I have to keep it simple now. The choice of source matters a lot because it's not about exhaustiveness or it's not about being concise. It's about how much time you have, and that is where most of the students do the mistake. They do not perfectly match the time and the source. You may be having 6 months and you choose a source which is meant for INICT, which will take 5 years for you to complete. And how do you prepare well, right? Make a right choice of source depending on the time available to you. You already completed your MBBS course abroad and you come back to India and you want to crack the FMG in 6 months, then choose a source which you can complete in 6 months. And if you are right now in, let us say, Russia or Kazakhstan and you have 5 years of runway, then choose a source which can be completed in 4 years, 5 years, and then you can revise multiple times, right? So make a right choice of the source, which is very, very important. Don't be under the FOMO that if I'm not done from this source, if I'm not done from, or if I've done from only this small source, I may not be able to crack. Students have cracked the FMG exam by barely resorting to some rapid revision or even YouTube videos, and students have flunked who have studied from the most exhaustive sources, right? So it is about matching your time and what you can do. That is the first thing. Second, inadequate revision. Please remember that if you can't revise it, it's as good as you're not read it, because in the exam knowing something is not enough to crack those MCQs, because MCQs are very, very objective. There is multiple layers of information, and until and unless you have fresh memory of it, you may not be able to apply your concepts and solve the questions. You will feel like, okay, I know this topic, I have heard something about it, I know few points, but still I'm not going to get to the answer. And this is what I usually hear after the exam. Sir, questions तो familiar से लग रहे थे, common topics ये थे, but they were very tough. Guys, the questions were not very tough. You had not revised those topics, so you were not able to relate to the finer points that were mentioned in the question. So make sure that you do revision. You need at least 2 to 3 rounds of revision. And when I say 2 to 3 rounds, it doesn't mean you have to read everything in that 2 to 3 rounds. First reading before the revision round starts is important. That's why you should make a right choice of source. And once you've chosen the source, complete one reading. And once you've completed reading, the second round of reading is your revision. During this revision, you don't have to revise everything. Glance through the important pages, and wherever you feel I have forgotten or memory is evaporated, that is where you should spend little more time. Then the subsequent revisions, you should go on shortlisting what topics you want to revisit. You don't have to revisit everything. Like for example, if I'm reading, let us say, biochemistry, and I have read it completely, but in the first revision I felt like the Krebs cycle I don't remember. So then spend 5 minutes extra on Krebs cycle. Try to remember it. But if you still feel that I have a tendency to forget, make it a short list. Now this short list will be revised one more round. And if it is still volatile, then it will also go to the third round of revision, which you will do just prior to examination, just few days prior to examination. Okay. Then third, lack of concepts. Not everything can be memorized. Many DNB students, many the FMG students think that, okay, I can memorize this and I'll get the answers right. Your memory can help you to get the answer right only if it is a straight one-liner. But if it involves even a little bit of application, then your memory cannot save you, right? So understanding concepts is important. Now there are some concepts which are too difficult. If you're finding it like, okay, I'm not able to do this, I'm not understanding it at all, and I don't have time to give for this concept, maybe take the memory as a route. But whenever you have decent time, and the topic is worth that time. For example, just to give you an example, ABG. Now tell me which FMG exam did not have a question on the acid base disorders. Almost every FMG exam had one question on acid base disorder. So giving 2 hours or 3 hours on this topic is worth it. To learn everything conceptually, stepwise. You don't have to memorize or just resort to some simple formulas to deal with ABG. Understand it conceptually, right? How body balances the acid base abnormalities, what causes metabolic acidosis, what causes metabolic alkalosis. You can learn it conceptually. So at least for the important topics where concepts are tested and not your memory is tested, learn the concepts. That's the third biggest mistake. Avoid doing it. You can talk to your faculty members, sir, what are the important concepts for this particular subject, and most of the faculty members will be more than happy to share a list of important conceptual topics. Like if you ask me in medicine, cardiac cycle and its application with respect to murmurs, jugular venous pulsations, acid base disorders, interpretation of PFT to differentiate between obstructive and restrictive disorders. These are all very conceptual topics, right? And it is worth spending time on these topics because they yield you results. A lot of MCQs where you have to interpret the PFT to decide whether it is asthma or COPD or interstitial lung disease. You get that question foolproof if you have understood the concept of the FEV1 and FEVC. Similarly, most of the valvular heart diseases, you will be able to deal with those questions if you have understood the concept of cardiac cycle and how it relates to valvular heart disease. If you just mug up, okay, I get pansystolic murmur in tricuspid regurgitation. If the examiner asks you a very direct question like pansystolic murmur is seen in which of the following condition, you can answer it. But if there is a layer of application, you cannot until and unless you know the concept. So that's why at least important topics where concepts are important, please address them conceptually. Then this is all important mistakes that you do in your preparation phase. Choosing a wrong source, not keeping in mind how much time you have, and then once you have chosen a wrong source, it invariably leads to inadequate revision. And when you have inadequate revision, you might not have built the concepts, right? They're all linked to each other. So make sure during your preparation phase you don't do these mistakes. And once your preparation phase is over, you do two mistakes in the run up to your examination. One of them is something that you routinely do in your examination hall, which is overthinking on questions. You read a question, answer something which is partially based on your knowledge, partially based on your gut feeling, you answer something, you move on, then after you go to the next question, you start rethinking about why should it be B, why not A, A भी तो हो सकता है ना, C भी तो हो सकता है, and then you go back to the question, change the answer, और exam hall के बाहर आने के बाद then you say, sir, I had actually marked B only, sir, but later I thought ऐसा भी हो सकता है, ऐसा 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 भी हो सकता है, so I answered C and now it is wrong, right? That's what we call as overthinking. इस overthinking के पीछे psychological reasons है. Reasons क्या है? We generally tend to overthink when we have lack of conceptual clarity. अगर clarity है तो overthinking नहीं होगा, right? Like in relationship, if you know that your guy or girl is not going to cheat you, then overthinking नहीं होगा कि हाँ शायद यहाँ इस टाइम मेरा कॉल नहीं उठा रही है तो किसी और के साथ घूम रही होगी. दिस इज व्हाट वी कॉल ओवर थिंकिंग, राइट? क्यों हो रहा है एक रिलेशनशिप में ओवर थिंकिंग? इज हैपनिंग बिकॉज यू डोंट हैव द ट्रस्ट, राइट? देयर इज लैक ऑफ ट्रस्ट. सिमिलरली इफ देयर इज लैक ऑफ कॉन्सेप्ट्स इट लीड्स टू ओवर थिंकिंग. तो यहाँ पे हम जितना स्ट्रांग होंगे प्रिपरेशन में, ओवर थिंकिंग बाई डिफॉल्ट कम होगा. एंड इक्वली इंपॉर्टेंट, statistically, matlab studies after studies have shown that when you answer questions where you don't have the conceptual understanding, thoda bahut hi kuch jante ho and you don't have the clarity, 60% of the times your first answer is going to be right, right? So that means only 40% of the times whatever you changed after revisiting is going to be right. So statistically it is more likely that your first answer is right, because gut feeling nahi hota hai. There's nothing called gut feeling. Gut feeling is your subconscious memory which is trying to relate to whatever you know and then trying to come out with some logical reasoning and some answer. So listen to your gut feeling and stick to your first answer until and unless कि हाँ clearly अब मुझे पता है हाँ ये point था जो मैंने miss किया था, इसके वजह से अब answer B नहीं C बनेगा, then only go back and rechange the answer. Otherwise don't. Good thing is that now they have fragmented the FMG exam into sections and it doesn't give you much choice of overthinking on the questions from the previous section, but within a section you can still do that. Avoid doing that mistake. 2 steps to help you avoid doing that mistake. Understand conceptual topics conceptually, and then second, if your gut feeling tells B is the answer, anyway negative marking to nahi hai, go ahead and mark it as B. Then stop overthinking. If your mind says, oh no, it shouldn't have been B, C was the answer because of this clear reason, then only go and rechange your answer. That's the fourth thing. Then fifth mistake in the run up to your preparation. This is something that I am tired of telling the FMGE aspirants. Sir, इस बार लगता है नहीं होगा. I can't probably crack this time. I will start concentrating on the next time. This is what I hear when the exam is like 15 days, 3 weeks or 1 month ahead of, like exam बस एक महीने बाद है, and then students are like, sir नहीं हो रहा है, mock test में इतने मिल रहे हैं, subject wise test में बस इतना ही मिल रहा है, इस बार नहीं होगा, and they give up. And one of their friend who was also in the same boat, who was also getting the similar score on the grand test and mock test and subject wise test, was also going through this similar mentality, decides that sir करना तो है, I will give a try, होगा तो होगा, नहीं तो नहीं, फिर से देखेंगे. The second person has very high chances of getting it right and getting the pass marks, and the first person who gave up just gave up, right? And he will get into the loop of preparing for the next cycle maybe, क्या पता ऐसा ही हो सकता है, he may still give up, right? So don't give up till your exam is done. Even if you are absolutely underconfident, keep giving your mock test. Don't get shattered by the scores. Just keep giving the mock test, keep reading, keep revising, and go to the examination hall with all courage. Zero courage, still go to the examination hall and give the answer. दो में से एक चीज तो होगा. If all goes well और नसीब में है तो एग्जाम पास हो जाएगा, नहीं तो you have also experienced the exam hall anxiety, environment, kind of questions asked, what are important topics. Now you are more smarter kid, अगला अटेम्प्ट और आसान हो जाएगा. तो एटलीस्ट एक्सपीरियंस तो मिलेगा, एक्सपीरियंस नहीं तो फिर सक्सेस मिलेगा तो और भी बेटर है, राइट? So don't give up prematurely. It's very common that when exam is just around the corner, 10 दिन है, 15 दिन है, we feel extremely anxious. We feel I'm not good enough for this field, I'm not good enough for this exam, and we end up giving up. That's a big mistake. Just don't give up. Be mechanical, right? एक रोबोट बन जाओ, just रोबोट की तरफ उठना है, पढ़ना है, सोना है, फिर एग्जाम हॉल जाना है. After the exam, you can vent out all your frustration on whoever you want, or you can chill, but till the examination, hold your nerves and make sure that you appear for the exam with effort till the last day. It matters a lot. मैं आपको n number of examples दे सकता हूँ where students had called me saying that sir I am giving up, and just because I requested that don't give up, keep studying, many of them continue to study. Some of them of course gave up. Those who continue to study, plenty of them, if not with great scores, they have somehow passed, they have crossed beyond 150. If they had given up, then they would have wasted another 6 months, 7 months of preparation, and then you know the stress of going through the same cycle again. सबसे बच गए by not giving up. So please do not give up till your exam is over. So these are the 5 mistakes to avoid, and if you avoid these mistakes, hopefully I would see a jump in the results in the upcoming FMGE exam. Let me address your queries. Okay, so I got few queries I will address. So there was one query that I got stuck at 148. A simple suggestion, stick to your source, revise the same source. So last time आपने कुछ ना कुछ गलतियां की होगी, right? One of them is I'm very sure overthinking and changing the answers, and you might also already know that okay ये 3-4 तो मेरे से willfully गलत हो गए, I could have dealt with them differently and I missed them. So avoid doing that. That itself will give you an edge. Okay, no need to change the source. Only thing extra you need to do this time is that solve more and more MCQs, because आजकल exam is not about knowledge, it's also about application of the knowledge. That is where many FMG students lack, because first round of preparation में बस read reading ही किया है, they're not solved many MCQs. So they know stuff but they can't apply it to questions, and that is where they go wrong. So बस यही दो चीज़ करना है, overthinking avoid करो and then solve more MCQs. Hopefully, not hopefully, definitely you will crack it this time. Medical, I would suggest if you're starting now, okay, it's still possible and doable. नंबर वन, आपको एंग्जाइटी छोड़ना है. डोंट बी एंग्शियस दैट ओ इट्स सच अ हरक्यूलियन टास्क टू गेट द एग्जाम क्रैक्ड. नो, इट्स नॉट. बिकॉज अगर आप रैंडमली जाके, लाइक आई नो लॉट ऑफ स्टूडेंट्स who have not read at all, right? Randomly जाके एग्जाम हॉल में they have just appeared and they have got 90 to 100. So 90 to 100 random choices मार्क करके भी आपको मिल सकते हैं. And if you have some basic understanding of at least some subjects, you can take it to 110, 120. Now you need to build knowledge to get another 20 to 30. And for the 20 to 30, you can choose concise sources and you can also shortlist the topics and subjects you want to address. For example, PSM है very high yield, डरमैट, रेडियो, अनस्थीसिया कम टाइम में बहुत हाई यील्ड है. मतलब दे आर नॉट बिग सब्जेक्ट्स, बट जितना टाइम उन पे लगता है एंड द रिटर्न वी गेट इज ह्यूज. सो यू कैन स्पेंड टाइम ऑन दैट. बड़े सब्जेक्ट्स लाइक मेडिसिन, सर्जरी, ओबीजी, यहाँ पे यू कैन कॉन्सेंट्रेट ऑन द रैपिड रिविजन. एंड वहाँ पे अगर कुछ लगता है कि दिमाग में बहुत लोड पड़ रहा है, नॉट एबल टू अंडरस्टैंड, skip it because now you don't have so much time, you're starting now. So skip anything that is heavy on your brain and you feel that it is going to drain a lot of energy to understand. Skip it, concentrate on those things which you can understand easily and remember. Even if you do that, you may be able to hit that 150 even if you are starting now. So thing is, कुछ सब्जेक्ट्स डिटेल में पढ़ो, कुछ सब्जेक्ट रैपिड रिविजन से पढ़ो एंड कुछ सब्जेक्ट्स बस MCQ से पढ़ो एंड यू शुड बी एबल टू स्टिल गो पास्ट 150. ओके. रणधीर कुमार, इट्स अ वेरी वेरी कॉमन मिस्टेक, राइट? ओवर थिंकिंग बहुत बार होता है क्योंकि ये एक कॉन्सेप्चुअल क्लैरिटी की कमी भी होती है एंड देन वी अंडर एस्टिमेट आर गट फीलिंग. देखो, FMGE एग्जाम इज नॉट लाइक नीट PG वेयर नेगेटिव मार्क्स आर देयर. डोंट थिंक मच एट ऑल. लाइफ का यही फंडा है, ज़्यादा मत सोचना है. बस जो दिल में आता है वही करना है, आंसर भी वही करना है. अनटिल एंड अनलेस आपका दिल ही चेंज करने के लिए बोलता है कि नहीं यार वो नहीं था, कुछ और था, ये तो रीज़न है. Only when your mind gives you a reasoning, go back and change the answer. Otherwise, don't. Priyanka Borde, yeah, same. So why we get stuck between two options? It's because of the lack of concepts. हर चीज़ का एक conceptual clarity ज़रूरी है. And until and unless that you can achieve that conceptual clarity, it's very difficult to deal between two options. I'm not saying that questions ही छोड़ दो. If you're stuck between two options, right, somehow make up mind and answer one. गलत भी हो सकता है, wrong, right भी हो सकता है, 50-50 chances है. But if you build conceptual clarity, then you will always reach the right answer. And yeah, what is this conceptual clarity? For example, बहुत से systems है, बहुत से subjects है जहाँ पे थोड़ा बहुत जानकारी gives you so much of clarity. For example, just example I'm giving. In neurology, if you have this clarity of upper and lower motor neuron, half of your options melt away just like that. So to understand neurology and deal with the questions, I want you to have the conceptual clarity of what is upper motor neuron and what is lower motor neuron, what are their functions, and how do we assess them. And if you have understood this, and then you start applying this knowledge to questions directly asked related to human element versus any neuro question, things become a lot more clear. Similarly, for example, if we are dealing with, let us say, ischemic heart disease, there are three things: STEMI, NSTEMI, and unstable angina. So if you have a conceptual clarity that where you have a fully formed thrombus, where you have minimal fibrin, and where you don't have fibrin, then it becomes very clear where we do thrombolysis, where we don't do thrombolysis, where we give anticoagulation. तो इसके पीछे concepts है. If I just mug it up, for STEMI we do thrombolysis, but we don't do it for NSTEMI and for unstable angina, then examiner थोड़ा सा भी question twist करेंगे, we will have difficulty. Now what I would suggest is that you still have less time, but at least make a short list of 5 to 6 important topics from every subject and वहाँ पे concept समझो. If you want, I can share the list from medicine. I would definitely say that the acid base disorder or ABG analysis, PFT, JVP, heart blocks, and management of arrhythmias. These are the 5 topics from medicine where I want you to have a clear understanding of the concepts and its application. Rest of the things like the nephrology, GIT, you can mug it up. You can easily mug it up. So Randhir Kumar, don't do that. They will ask a lot of easy questions. In one of the INISS, super specialty for AIMS, PGI, JIPMER, that asked insulin is secreted by which of the following cells? beta cells of the pancreas, alpha cells of the pancreas. These were the options. And those who have completed MD medicine, they also got into this loop of overthinking. Now, if I ask the same question to a class 10 or a +1, +2 student of the NEET UG aspirant, they would have answered it: beta cells secrete insulin. Everyone knows. But these MD students, एम्स के एग्जाम में ऐसा क्वेश्चन कैसे आ सकता है? So many of them thought that way, and at least half of them ended up answering it wrong. कुछ नया research किया होगा. There may be a new study or new publication stating that the insulin also comes from alpha cells or some other cells, and they ended up changing the answers. And many MD completed doctors answered it wrong. So exam mein there's nothing called easy and difficult. The fact of the matter is that if you know, it seems easy. If you don't know, it seems difficult. If it is seeming easy, don't overthink कि हाँ इतना easy question क्यों पूछेंगे. No, it seems easy to you because you know. Answer it. That's it. That's it. Okay, so I guess I've addressed most of your queries. So just take a look at these mistakes, keep it in your mind, and I don't want any of you to repeat these mistakes, because if these mistakes are avoided, it will add 20 to 25 marks to your current capability, and that will definitely push you beyond the passing marks and hopefully give you gracious higher scores. Gracious higher scores. Okay, so that's it from me today. I'll see you in the FMGE revision videos. I will share the schedule soon, and once the schedule is up, we can definitely talk about individual systems and subjects. Samir One, you're absolutely right. Absolutely right. Revision 2 to 3 rounds is important. Revision नहीं किया है तो इसका मतलब है it is equal to पढ़ा नहीं है. So please choose a source which you can complete and you can include the revision. Without that, we are not heading towards a good FMGE score. Okay, so that's it from me. See you soon.